I'm not pretty, she whispered. The cowboy replied, That's okay. I need real, not fancy. The sun sank behind the jagged red canyons of Mars, casting long shadows across the settlement of Red Spire, a small frontier town built from the rusted wreckage of old starships. The wind howled through broken domes, carrying Martian dust that coated every surface in a fine red powder. In the middle of this rugged town, a small workshop hummed with the sound of tools and machines. Inside, Cassie Vaughn wiped her greasy hands on a rag and stared at the half-disassembled engine in front of her. Sparks danced across the metal as she tightened bolts and adjusted circuits. Her face, marked with scars from a past accident, glowed faintly under the flickering light of the overhead lamp. Cassie didn't care about looking pretty. On Mars, beauty didn't fix broken engines or keep you alive. She was humming a low tune when the first vibrations of approaching hooves echoed through the dusty streets. At first she thought it was one of the local scavenger gangs, but the sound had a rhythm, a steadiness that was different. Soon a cloud of red dust rolled toward her workshop, and a figure emerged, a lone rider on a hoverbike, moving with the kind of quiet confidence that came from years surviving the frontier. The rider slowed near her workshop. Cassie squinted through the dust. His coat was worn, his hat pulled low, and his face was shadowed, but there was a calm, deliberate energy about him. The hoverbike hissed to a stop, and he lifted his visor. A pair of sharp green eyes scanned the workshop, landing finally on her. I need help, he said, his voice rough but steady. Cassie leaned on the workbench, wiping her hands again. You're not from around here. No, he admitted, and neither is my ship anymore. He gestured behind him, and she turned to see a battered starship that had clearly seen better days. Its engine sparks flickered weakly and panels hung loose. Whoever repaired it last hadn't done a good job. Cassie didn't usually talk to strangers, especially not on the Martian frontier, but something about him felt different. Something real.
What kind of help?
She asked. Engines fried. I need it running by nightfall. She shook her head, trying not to smile. You came to the wrong person for fast work, he shrugged. I came to the right person for real work. Her chest tightened, and she glanced down at her hands. They were stained with grease and dust. She whispered almost to herself, I'm not pretty. The man looked at her, really looked, and said softly, That's okay. I need real, not fancy. Cassie froze for a second. No one had ever said that to her before. Not like that. It wasn't a lie, and it wasn't flattery. It was simple, honest. She felt her cheeks heat up under her soot-streaked skin. Real, she repeated, as if testing the word. She studied him for a moment. The edges of his face were hard like stone, but his eyes softened that hardness. Fine, she said finally. Let's see what we can do. The work began in silence at first. Cassie handed him tools, guided him through systems, and cursed softly when circuits sparked unexpectedly. The smell of burning metal mixed with Martian dust in the small workshop, making the air thick and heavy. As they worked, she learned his name was Jax Rourke, watched her carefully. He wasn't the type to talk much, but his eyes followed her every move. When she made a sharp turn with a wrench, he stepped in just in time to keep her from cutting herself. You're careful, he said quietly. I have to be, she replied without looking up. One mistake and this place goes up in smoke or worse. Ever think about leaving? He asked. His voice was curious, not judgmental. Cassie paused, holding a bolt in her hand. I've thought about it, she said, but this is home, even if it's a mess of dust and broken ships. I get it. Some places stick with you no matter how rough they are. The hours passed, and the red sky turned to a deep violet. The twin moons of Mars rose slowly, casting a pale light over the settlement. Outside, the wind continued its howl, rattling the fragile domes, but inside, sparks flew and circuits hummed. By the time they finished the engine, a strange rhythm had formed between them. Cassie, normally quiet and guarded, found herself explaining why certain circuits were dangerous to override, and Jax listened, occasionally offering advice or asking questions. It was a dance of understanding, two people moving carefully around danger and trust. When the engine finally roared to life, filling the workshop with heat and sound, Cassie stepped back, wiping her hands on her rag. It's running, she said, a faint smile tugging at her lips. Jax removed his gloves, letting them hang at his side. Good work, he said simply. Better than I expected. Compliments weren't something she received often. Not for her skill, and certainly not for herself. Outside, the first shadow flickered across the settlement. Cassie noticed it moving among the broken buildings, and a cold shiver ran down her spine. She stepped to the doorway, scanning the dimly lit streets. "Something's out there," she muttered. Jax followed her gaze, narrowing his eyes. "Not human," he said. His hand moved near the holster at his side. Instinctive, protective. Cassie swallowed hard. "Do we run?" she asked. "No," he said, his voice firm. "We wait, and we fight if we have to." They watched together in silence as the shadow shifted, a dark form moving with strange grace. Cassie's heart raced. This was the frontier, and the frontier didn't forgive hesitation. Hours passed, and the shadow stayed just beyond the light of the settlement. Every now and then a faint noise, a scraping, a hiss, echoed through the dust. Cassie kept one hand near her tools ready for anything, while Jax kept his eyes on the horizon. Finally, the shadow moved away, melting into the distance. Cassie exhaled, feeling the tension drain from her body. "That was close," she said. Jax nodded. "Frontier life. You get used to it, or you don't last long." They walked back into the workshop, the warm glow of the lights welcoming them. For a moment, the world felt normal, like it had before the shadow came. Cassie wiped her hands on the rag again, looking at Jax. "I don't usually let anyone help me," she admitted. "Good thing you did," he said, with a small grin. "I don't trust many people either." And just like that, a fragile bond formed, born in dust, sparks, and whispered truths. Outside, the twin moons of Mars hung silently in the violet sky, watching over the small, stubborn workshop and the people inside it. Tonight, Cassie realized something she hadn't thought before. Maybe being real was enough. Maybe that was all anyone really needed. And for the first time in a long time, she felt like someone might see her, truly see her, and not look away. The wind picked up again, carrying the dust through the broken settlement. Somewhere in the distance, a faint scrape of metal reminded them that danger was never far. But inside the workshop, with engines humming and hearts cautiously opening, Cassie and Jax faced the frontier together, ready for whatever came next. The twin moons of Mars hung high over the jagged canyons, casting pale silver light across the settlement of Red Spire. The wind had died down, leaving an eerie quiet. Cassie Vaughn and Jax Rourke climbed into the hoverbike, ready to leave the small, dusty town behind. The engine of Jax's ship purred steadily now, a soft mechanical hum that spoke of life and survival. "Where are we going?" Cassie asked, tightening her grip on the hoverbike handle. Jax didn't answer immediately. He glanced over his shoulder at her, his green eyes reflecting the moon's glow. "To find who's been following me," he said finally. "I have old enemies. They don't forget." Cassie frowned. "Enemies? You didn't mention any of that before." "Not my type of story for new friends," he replied, his voice low and steady. "But they're dangerous, and they don't care who gets in the way." Cassie considered turning back, but something inside her told her this was bigger than herself. She had grown up on Mars, among dust and broken dreams, and danger was nothing new. She nodded. "Then we go." The hoverbike rose into the thin Martian air, dust swirling beneath it. Red canyons stretched endlessly ahead, jagged walls carved by centuries of wind and dust storms. As they flew, Cassie studied Jax. His coat flapped behind him, worn and torn from countless battles. His hands were steady on the controls, but his eyes remained sharp, always scanning, always calculating. He was a survivor. Hours passed as they navigated through the narrow canyons. The silence between them was comfortable, broken only by the hum of the engine and the occasional crackle from the ship's communication system. Cassie worked on keeping her mind focused, but she couldn't help thinking about the man beside her. The honesty in his words, the way he didn't judge her scars, the quiet strength that seemed to radiate from him. Suddenly, Jax slowed the hoverbike. Cassie looked up and saw a small cluster of rocks ahead, arranged unnaturally. "Stop," he said. "Someone's been here." Cassie's heart skipped. She leaned forward, squinting through the thin Martian atmosphere. There, faint tracks marked the red soil, mechanical prints mixed with human footprints. "Pirates?" she asked. "Scrap pirates," Jax said grimly. "They hunt ships, scrap materials, and sometimes people." Cassie swallowed hard. "People? What do you mean?" "Modify them," Jax said, his voice tight. "Cyber enhancements, sometimes even brain hacks. Makes them better at surviving. And fighting." Cassie's stomach turned. She had seen the results before, in old stories and abandoned camps. People who weren't people anymore. Machines with human parts, moving like ghosts in the Martian night. Jax's eyes narrowed. They're close. We need to move quietly. They descended further into the canyon, following the tracks. Shadows stretched long over jagged rocks, hiding shapes that seemed almost alive. Cassie's fingers brushed the edges of her toolkit. Her mind raced, thinking of ways to rig traps or disable intruders. "Do you always fight your way through life?" she asked suddenly, trying to break the tension. Jax didn't answer right away. He focused on navigating the canyon. Finally, he said, "Pretty much. You get used to it. Or you die." She had learned long ago that fear slowed you down. "I prefer using my brain," she said. "But I can fight, too." He glanced at her, a hint of respect in his eyes. "I can tell." The canyon opened into a wide crater filled with the wreckage of old ships. Rusted metal jutted out like broken teeth. Among the wrecks, movement flickered. Figures slipped between the shadows. Scrap pirates. Their limbs were partially mechanical, eyes glowing faintly. They scanned the area as if hunting prey. Cassie felt a shiver. "We need a plan," she whispered. Jax nodded. "You set traps. I'll cover you." Working quickly, Cassie rigged a series of improvised alarms using spare circuits, magnetic wires, and old mining drones she had salvaged from her workshop. She smiled grimly as she thought, "This is why being real matters. No one else could do this." Jax kept watch, scanning the area with his rifle. "They're closer than we thought," he muttered. Suddenly, a metallic clatter echoed from behind a pile of wreckage. A pirate stepped out, its mechanical limbs glinting in the moonlight, its eyes glowing red fixed on them. Cassie's heart raced. She activated the first trap, and the ground beneath the pirate's feet shifted, sending it stumbling into a heap of broken metal. Sparks flew, and the pirate hissed in frustration. Jax fired a quick shot, disabling the pirate's remaining sensors. "Nice work," he said, his voice low but approving. Cassie allowed herself a small smile. "I told you, brains over brawn." They were smarter than usual, coordinating their movements. Cassie realized they would need a distraction. She quickly pulled together a decoy drone, rigging it with flashing lights and noisemakers. She launched it over the ridge, and the pirates turned immediately, chasing after the moving lights. "Go!" Jax said, and they sprinted across the crater, weaving between the jagged wrecks. Sparks flew from broken circuits, smoke filled the air, and for a moment it felt like they were running through fire and shadows. Cassie felt the adrenaline rush, sharp and alive. She glanced at Jax, who was moving like he had done this 1,000 times before. The respect between them grew, not in words, but in action. As they reached the edge of the crater, a larger shadow blocked their path. A pirate, bigger and more dangerous than the others, stood in their way. Its body was almost completely mechanical, with glowing veins of power running across its arms. Jax raised his rifle, but Cassie stepped forward. "Wait, I have an idea." She scanned the wreckage quickly, spotting an old energy conduit. "Cover me!" she shouted, and ran toward the conduit, rerouting power through broken circuits. Sparks and light flashed, blinding the cyber pirate for a few crucial seconds. Jax took the opening, firing with precision. The pirate stumbled back, clanking against metal debris. Cassie exhaled, her heart pounding. "That was too close," she muttered. Jax walked over, brushing dust from his coat. "Not bad for a mechanic," he said with a rare smile. Cassie felt heat rise in her cheeks. "I told you, real work matters." Through the wreckage, Cassie caught sight of movement. More pirates, and something bigger, watching from the shadows. It wasn't human. Its shape shifted, almost blending with the wrecks, waiting for the right moment. Jax followed her gaze, frowning. "They're tracking us. We can't stay here. We need a safe place. Somewhere to regroup." Jax thought for a moment, then said, "There's an old space station in orbit nearby. Abandoned, mostly. We can hide there, at least for the night." "Sounds dangerous," Cassie said. "Everything in space is dangerous," he replied. "But it's better than being caught down here." As they prepared to leave, Cassie paused. She looked at Jax, studying the man who had walked into her workshop like a storm and stayed like a shadow she didn't want to let go. "Do you trust me?" she asked softly. He glanced at her, then back at the wreckage-filled crater. "I trust you to keep us alive," he said. His eyes softened slightly, just for a moment. "And that's enough for now." Cassie smiled faintly, though the nerves in her stomach didn't let go. They climbed into the hover bike and lifted off, leaving the Martian canyon behind. As the station came into view, dark and silent against the stars, Cassie realized that life on the frontier wasn't just dust and danger. It was choice. Choice to fight, choice to trust, and sometimes choice to see someone for who they really were. And as they approached the derelict station, Cassie felt the first thrill of something she hadn't felt in years: hope. The old space station hung in orbit around Mars like a forgotten skeleton. Its metal hull was pitted and scarred, rusted in places where the thin atmosphere had managed to reach. Inside, darkness swallowed most corridors, broken lights flickering occasionally. The station had once been a mining outpost, but now it was abandoned, except for the shadows that moved where it shouldn't. Cassie Vaughn's hands tightened on her toolkit as she stepped into the main docking bay. The hoverbike's engines hummed quietly behind them, a small comfort in the vast emptiness. She glanced at Jack's work. His rifle was raised, eyes scanning every shadow. "Stay close," he said. "They're here. I can feel it." She was used to danger, but this felt different. The air in the station was heavy, metallic, and cold. Every step echoed down empty halls, the sound bouncing off the walls like whispers. They moved cautiously, following a path Jax had mapped in his mind. The pirates had tracked them here, she was certain of it, but so far they hadn't made themselves known. Cassie's fingers brushed the edge of her tool belt, ready to improvise if needed. As they passed a row of broken cabins, a sudden metallic clatter made them both jump. A figure emerged from the shadows, half human, half machine, its glowing red eyes fixed on them. Its movements were quick, unnatural, a dangerous combination of strength and speed. "Here they come," Jax muttered, raising his rifle. Cassie acted on instinct. She yanked a loose cable from her belt, threw it across the floor, and slammed her foot down on a pressure plate she had rigged in seconds. Sparks shot up as the mechanical pirate tripped and fell, its systems overloaded momentarily. Jax fired with precision, taking advantage of the distraction. The pirate hissed, sparks flying from its damaged arm. "Not bad," Jax said, a faint smile crossing his face. Cassie allowed herself a small grin. "Brains over brawn," she said. The station seemed to groan around them as if sensing the fight. The shadows shifted, more figures moving silently through the darkness. Cassie realized that this place was alive with danger. Every corridor was a potential trap. They ducked into a maintenance room, breathing heavily. Cassie pulled out her toolkit, quickly scanning the schematics on a flickering screen. "If we can control the station's magnetic locks, we can slow them down," she said. Jax nodded. "Do it. I'll cover you." Working quickly, Cassie rerouted power through the station's old systems. Sparks flew, and alarms blinked erratically. She ducked as a rogue security drone whirred past, nearly knocking her off her feet. Jax fired a few warning shots, disabling it before it could attack. "Almost got it," Cassie muttered, her fingers moving with practiced speed. Finally, the locks engaged, sealing several corridors. The sound of the pirates' frustrated growls echoed through the metal halls. Jax glanced at her. "Good thinking," he said. "You've got quick reflexes." Cassie shrugged, but she felt a surge of pride. "Years of fixing broken things teaches you a few tricks," she said. For a moment, they moved in silence, the tension easing slightly. Cassie noticed something she hadn't before. Jax's hands, steady and confident, but with small tremors when the fight was over. Even someone as strong as him carried fear, and maybe that made him real too. Suddenly, a loud crash shook the station. A massive figure emerged from the shadows, a cybernetic pirate, bigger than the rest, with glowing veins of energy running across its metal arms. Its eyes locked onto Jax. "This one's not going to be easy," Jax muttered. Cassie's mind raced. They needed a plan, fast. She spotted a nearby maintenance crane and whispered to Jax, "I have an idea. Distract it, and I'll use the crane." He fired precise shots, keeping the creature moving. Sparks flew as the metal pirate struck walls and machinery, clearly angered. Cassie climbed the crane, careful not to make a sound. She pulled a cable through its claw, aiming at the pirate's legs. With a swift motion, she released the cable. The claw swung down, entangling the pirate and pulling it off balance. It crashed to the floor, metal screeching. He fired a few more shots, disabling its sensors and weapons. The pirate hissed, sparks flying, but it was no longer a threat. Cassie climbed down, brushing dust from her coat. "That was close," she said, her voice trembling slightly. Jax looked at her, eyes serious. "You did good. Better than good. You kept us alive." She felt heat rise in her cheeks. "I told you, brains over brawn," she said again, almost laughing. They moved deeper into the station, the shadows around them growing thinner. For now the immediate threat was gone, but the sense of danger lingered. The station was old, unstable, and full of secrets. As they navigated a narrow corridor, Cassie heard a faint whisper, metal scraping against metal, followed by a low hum. She stopped, listening carefully. "What is it?" Jax asked, noticing her pause. Cassie shook her head, not sure. "Something's moving, but not like before." They crept forward, weapons ready. In the next room, they found a control chamber, half destroyed, with consoles sparking and wires dangling. And there, crouched in the shadows, was something else entirely. A figure moved slowly, limbs human but with strange glowing implants along its spine and arms. Its eyes were dim, almost human, but it looked weak. Jack stepped forward cautiously. "Who are you?" he asked. The figure lifted its head. "Help me," it whispered. Cassie exchanged a glance with Jax. They had been fighting enemies all night, and now this was different. The figure wasn't attacking. It was trapped, broken, and asking for help. "We have to help," Cassie said softly, moving forward. Jax hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "All right. But keep your guard up." Cassie approached the figure, examining its implants. "They've modified you, against your will," she said, her voice gentle. "We can remove some of this. It'll hurt, but you'll be free. Please hurry." Working quickly, Cassie used her tools to disable the implants, carefully cutting circuits and rerouting power. Sparks flew and the figure groaned softly, but gradually the glowing implants dimmed. Jax watched, impressed by her skill and determination. "You're amazing," he said quietly. Cassie didn't respond, focused on the delicate work. Finally, the last implant powered down, and the figure slumped, exhausted but alive. "Thank you," it whispered. "I didn't think anyone would care." "Some of us do. Some of us care about real things." "You really are real," he said. She had spent so long hiding behind her skills and scars, but here, in the cold metal halls of the station, she realized that being real was enough. The relief was brief. Outside, the faint sounds of movement reminded them that the pirates were still out there. They had survived the immediate threat, but the danger wasn't over. Jax helped the weakened figure to their feet. "We need to find a safe place to rest," he said. "Then we figure out how to get off this station." Cassie nodded, glancing at the ruined control panels and sparking wires. "Let's hope the rest of the station is quiet." As they moved through the shadows, Cassie couldn't help but glance at Jax. There was a bond forming between them, born from trust, danger, and honesty. And for the first time in a long time, she felt like maybe she wasn't alone. The station groaned again, metal bending under the stress of age and neglect. Sparks fell from the ceiling, lighting the corridors in brief flashes. They moved cautiously, every step careful, every sense alert. Cassie thought about the desert canyons below Mars, the dusty streets of Red Spire, and the battles they had already faced. This frontier was harsh and unforgiving, but in the darkness, she found something new. Courage, trust, and a fragile hope that they could survive together. They reached a small maintenance bay, safe for the moment. Cassie collapsed into a chair, her hands shaking slightly from the adrenaline. Jack sat nearby, cleaning his rifle, eyes scanning the shadows as always. "Tomorrow," he said finally, "we find a way out. But tonight, we rest." Cassie nodded, letting herself relax, even just a little. For all the danger, all the shadows and sparks, they had survived. Together. Outside, the twin moons of Mars cast their pale light through broken panels, illuminating the station's hollow halls, and for the first time in a long time, Cassie felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. The small maintenance bay was quiet, save for the faint hum of the station's damaged systems. Cassie Vaughn sat on a metal crate, her hands trembling slightly as she cleaned her tools. She could feel the adrenaline slowly leaving her body, leaving her exhausted but alive. Jax Rourke leaned against the wall, his rifle across his lap. His green eyes were tired but alert, scanning every shadow. Even now, he didn't fully relax. He had survived countless battles, but the Martian frontier always demanded vigilance. "We can't stay here long," Jack said quietly. "The pirates will regroup. They'll come back stronger." Cassie nodded. "I know, but at least we've bought ourselves some time." She glanced at the weak cybernetic figure they had saved. It sat slumped in the corner, breathing slowly, recovering from its modifications. Cassie felt a flicker of pride. They had saved someone today. Something real, not fancy. "Do you think we can get off the station?" she asked, her voice soft. Jax looked out through a cracked viewport at the red planet below. "We have to. But we'll need a plan. Something big." Cassie straightened, determination filling her chest. "Then let's make it big." I don't plan to die on a broken station, not tonight. For hours they worked together, scavenging parts from the abandoned sections of the station. Cassie rigged the remaining drones and circuits into traps, improvising defenses with wires, magnetic plates, and energy conduits. Jax checked weapons, tested the ship's systems, and scouted the corridors for threats. Every step they took, every spark of their work, reminded them that the frontier demanded skill, courage, and trust. As they prepared, a distant rumble shook the station. Shadows moved along the walls. Pirates returning, more organized this time. Cassie's heart thumped. "They're here," she whispered. Jax nodded. "Time to see if all our work pays off." They split into positions, Cassie by the control panel and Jax near the entry corridor. The pirates moved silently at first, then with growing confidence, entering the station in small, deadly groups. Cassie activated the first trap. Magnetic wires shot across the corridor, snagging the group of pirates as sparks flew. They stumbled, falling into crates and machinery, their mechanical limbs screeching under the strain. Jax fired precise shots, disabling their sensors and weapons. Each movement was calculated, practiced, and deadly. Together they moved like a single unit, the trust between them growing with every pulse of danger. The larger cyber pirate, the one that had been strongest in the previous encounter, advanced from the shadows. Its glowing veins of energy pulsed like a heartbeat. Cassie's hand shook slightly as she grabbed the cable from the crane they had prepared earlier. Jax faced the creature, firing warning shots to keep its attention. "Now, Cassie!" he shouted. Cassie swung the cable with precision, wrapping it around the pirate's legs. The creature crashed into the metal floor, sparks flying from the collision. Jax moved in, disabling its systems with precise shots. The creature fell silent, defeated. For a moment, everything was quiet. The station groaned around them, but the immediate threat had passed. Cassie leaned against the wall, breathing heavily. "We made it," she said softly. Jax looked at her, eyes tired but filled with something deeper. "We made it because of you," he said. "Brains, courage, and real skill." Cassie felt her cheeks warm. She had spent her life hiding behind her hands, her scars, and her work. Yet here, with Jax, she felt seen. Not for being pretty, not for anything fancy, just for being real. They turned their attention to the weakened figure they had saved. It looked at them with gratitude, its dim eyes now brighter. "Thank you," it whispered. "I can survive now." Cassie smiled faintly. "Some of us care about survival," she said. "Not just the machines. The station's old systems still work, just barely. We can use them to launch the hoverbike back to the planet's surface. Then we figure out our next step." Cassie helped him, guiding circuits into place, rerouting energy through damaged lines. Sparks flew, smoke rose, but eventually the systems hummed steadily. The hoverbike's engines came online, glowing softly under the dim light. Outside, the Martian horizon stretched vast and endless. Dust storms swirled in the distance, and the twin moons cast their pale silver glow over the canyon edges. Cassie looked out, feeling a thrill of freedom mixed with lingering danger. "Ready?" Jax asked, glancing at her. Cassie nodded, gripping her toolkit. "Let's get out of here." The hoverbike lifted off the station, leaving the dark, abandoned corridors behind. As they descended toward the Martian surface, Cassie felt a sense of relief, but also a twinge of sadness. The station had been dangerous, yes, but it had also shown them something rare. The strength found in trust and cooperation. They landed in a narrow canyon, safe for the moment. Cassie and Jax stepped off the bike, scanning the area for signs of the pirates. For now the coast was clear. Jax looked at her, a rare softness in his eyes. "You know," he said, "you didn't have to prove anything back there." "But you did, and it saved us." Cassie laughed lightly, brushing dust from her coat. "I didn't think proving myself was optional out here," she said. "The frontier has a way of making you. And it shows who's real, not who's fancy, not who looks good. Who could survive?" "Real," she whispered, remembering the first night he had said it to her. "I guess that's enough." Jax stepped closer. "It's more than enough. For me, it's everything." For a moment they stood there, two souls on the Martian frontier, dust swirling around them, hearts still racing from battle. There was no pretense, no false charm, no empty words. Just honesty. The twin moons rose higher, casting light on their path as they prepared to move again. The frontier was vast, dangerous, and full of uncertainty, but together they felt stronger. They had faced shadows, mechanical monsters, and their own fears, and they had survived. Cassie looked at Jax, feeling a rare warmth in her chest. "I'm still not pretty," she said softly. Jack smiled, the corner of his mouth turning up. I don't need pretty. I need real. And you're as real as they come. A small laugh escaped Cassie, mingling with the wind that swept through the canyon. For all the battles, all the dangers, all the shadows they had faced, she felt alive, strong. And for the first time in years, she didn't feel alone. They climbed back onto the hoverbike, engines humming under them. As they lifted off the canyon floor, the twin moons reflected on the red dust below. Cassie glanced at Jax, and he gave her a small nod. Where next? She asked. Jax looked at the horizon, the endless Martian frontier stretching before them. Wherever the wind takes us, he said. Together. Cassie felt a thrill run through her. The frontier was harsh. It was unforgiving. It was dangerous, but for the first time it was also theirs, real, raw, and alive. The hoverbike rose into the Martian sky, dust swirling beneath it as the two rode toward the unknown. Ahead lay new challenges, new dangers, and new adventures, but they were ready. Together, they could face anything. And in that moment, amidst the harsh winds and endless red canyons, Cassie understood something she had never known before. Being real was enough. Real was stronger than pretty. Real was enduring. Real could survive anything. And for Jack's work, for herself, and for the lives they would touch along the way, real was all that mattered.